Good morning. You're watching World News here from Warsaw, Poland on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. Good morning. The results of the runoff round in the presidential elections in Croatia are in. Incumbent Zoran Milanović has taken nearly 3/4 of the vote, securing a second term in office. Milanović was the favorite to win the race, coming just shy of an outright majority of 49% of the vote in the first round. Social Democrat Milanović is an outspoken critic of Western military support for Ukraine and has frequently clashed with the ruling party over foreign and public policies issues during his 5-year term. His pro-Russian stance contrasts with his record as former prime minister who oversaw Croatia's EU accession in 2013. Milanovic's victory is a blow to the ruling party. The Croatian Democratic Union, already weakened by a corruption case involving the former health minister, which became public in November. And in a speech on Sunday night, Croatian President-elect Zoran Milanović thanked the voters for their support, saying that he sees his victory as a recognition of his work and a strong message to the government about the need for responsible governance of the state.
This is a big day for me. I see this victory as a sign of approval of my efforts over the past 5 years, and an act of trust that people have for me. It is also a message from Croatians to those who should hear it, and I ask them to heed it. But aside from my voters, there are people here who chose a different candidate. So please, give a big round of applause for the members and voters of the Croatian Democratic Union.
Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has announced that his country will officially offer to host a meeting between US President-elect Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to Trump, plans for his meeting with Putin are already underway. However, no details have been made public yet. In a television broadcast on Sunday, Vučić said that Serbia is ready to host the meeting and can guarantee appropriate security for both men. According to the Serbian leader, Belgrade is well suited to host Trump and Putin because it is not a member of any military alliances such as NATO. Vučić also added that Serbia is, quote, the country where President Trump has the greatest support in Europe and where President Putin is still very popular. Incoming White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz recently spoke about the Trump administration's efforts to end the ongoing war in Ukraine. According to Waltz, Trump is likely to speak with Vladimir Putin in the near future.
Well, the preparations are underway, but just taking a step back for a moment, John, it's been striking to me just since President's election how many people have gone from just unqualified blank check as long as it takes, whether that's months, years, decades, in terms of perpetuating this war, which really has bogged down to a World War I style meat grinder of people and resources with World War III consequences, to now even President Zelensky walking in the room in Paris and saying, ready to work with you to end this war. Let's end it justly, responsibly, in a way that protects Ukraine's future, but ends this thing, and so the entire world can move on from it. So from President Trump's perspective, you can't enter a deal if you don't have some type of relationship and dialogue with the other side, and we will absolutely establish that in the coming months.
Unrest continues in Georgia, where protesters remain at odds with the authorities and associates of the ruling pro-Russian government. Protesters recently confronted a group of judges having a lunch meeting at a restaurant in the capital, Tbilisi. When the judges arrived, they were yelled and whistled at, while their cars were peddled with eggs. The protesters called the judges slaves for their alleged obedience to the Georgian Dream government and assisting the party in retaining power after last October's contentious elections. They also demanded answers about protest arrests. At least one of the judges was sanctioned in 2023 by the United States over accusations on corruption and undermining the rule of law. At least 12 people have been arrested in connection with the protests. Georgians have been demonstrating against the government non-stop for 46 days now. Thousands of supporters of Calin Georgescu took to the streets of Bucharest on Sunday, demanding a second round of presidential elections. The first was annulled after evidence of foreign interference in the vote had come to light. Far-right Georgescu unexpectedly won the first round of the presidential elections on November 24, but Romania's constitutional court annulled the results 2 weeks later, citing illegal use of digital technologies as well as the use of undeclared sources of funding by Georgescu. The Alliance for the Unity of Romanians partly invited supporters from across the country to rally on Sunday, asking them to mark. Two North Korean soldiers have reportedly been captured by Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region. The development is a crucial piece of evidence that North Korea is involved in Russia's full-scale invasion on Ukraine. Now detained, the soldiers are cooperating with a Ukrainian security service.
The two Korean soldiers have been wounded, but they might feel lucky to be alive.
Other North Korean soldiers and Russians keep trying to finish off their wounded Koreans, specifically to prevent them from being captured.
With reports of Russians burning the faces of dead North Korean soldiers to hide their identity, the capture of the two living combatants provides solid evidence of the North Korean presence in Kursk.
They were taken with their documents, Russian documents, which showed that Russia is trying to cover their North Korean involvement in the war, because they had documents on the name of Russian citizens from Tuva Republic, which is just complete lie. And these people are from North Korea, they told it themselves.
The two were fighting against Ukrainian forces in the Russian region of Kursk. After apprehension, they were transported to Kiev, where they were interrogated by the security service of Ukraine. They have already provided the agency with crucial intel.
During interrogation, the North Korean soldier who had a fake ID told SBU officers that the document was issued to him in Russia in the fall of 2024. According to him, part of the North Korean combat units spent a week training with Russian forces.
However, the intel collected is expected to be more useful for purposes other than military ones.
Very important, again, as I told you, to show to all our partners that Russia, first of all, is not so strong like they try to show, because they need to ask Iran for weaponry, North Korea for soldiers.
Multiple intelligence sources have indicated that upwards of 10,000 North Korean rank and file have been deployed to help Russians stave off the Ukrainian offensive in the Kursk region. Last month, the Biden administration reported that more than 1,000 of them have been killed during the fighting.
And President Zelensky says he's ready to exchange North Korean soldiers for Ukrainians held in Russia. Because Moldova no longer receives gas from Russia and electricity from its breakaway region of Transnistria, the country is now attempting to diversify its energy supply. However, the new sources are not as cost-effective as discounted gas from Moscow, which might shake the country's political scene. Our correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski is on site in Chisinau with more on this topic.
It's around -1 degree Celsius now in Moldova, which is a bit warmer than usually at this time of the year. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the weather might play an important role in the country's politics. And let me tell you why. Moldova has managed to diversify its energy mix and is now having broken free from Russian energy dependence, is now mainly supplying energy from Romania and Ukraine. But this independence comes at a cost. Some sources say that the electricity bills for individual users could have risen up to 200% over the last 2 years. This is important as the country is heading for the general elections to be held later this year. And if the winters are cold enough and the electricity and gas prices rise even more, then some Moldovans might reject the current government's pro-European bid and instead vote for the parties who would rather see the deal made with Russia, the deal which means buying discounted energy for the price of dependence. From Chisinau, Moldova, for TVP World, I'm Paweł Trzaskowski.
Journalists at Finnish Radio have uncovered at least 13 Dubai-registered companies that operate a total of 55 registered tankers being used in Russia's shadow fleet. One of the vessels of the list is the Eagle S, the tanker suspected of severing the Estlink 2 power cable between Finland and Estonia last month.
The companies were registered to luxury hotel rooms in Dubai and in many cases had no additional information or even a website. The shadow fleet consists of vessels that are registered under the flag of other nations, but are fully controlled by Russia. They are used for intelligence gathering, sanctions evasion and sabotage. Recently a number of vessels have been spotted in the Baltic Sea, including one that is suspected of using its anchor to cut the Finnish-Estonian undersea power cable. According to the radio report, Russia has registered hundreds of vessels in various countries.
As snow blankets Poland from the north to the south, areas close to the Baltic Sea coast are being rocked by intense storms. Strong winds are currently wreaking havoc on western Pomerania. Coastal regions are experiencing flooding as the water in the Baltic Sea moves inland. Aisha Abachi has more.
Świnoujście, Dziwnów and Łeba are just some cities in Poland's north experiencing flooding in the recent days. Residents and emergency services are laying sandbags in locations where the water from the Baltic Sea is spilling over. Water is pouring into residential properties and posing a threat to the buildings. In marinas, the water has flooded nearby parking lots. Weather forecasts predict that the conditions will persist until Sunday. The winds are expected to change direction on Monday.
While European leaders are pleased with the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, concern remains that radical Islamist elements could take control of the country and introduce their own repressive policies. Any relaxation of the sanctions put on the country in conditional of the future government's approach to gender and minority equality.
Wir haben als Europäer, der französische Außenminister und ich genauso.
As Europeans, the French Foreign Minister and I, as well as many others who have visited the country, have made it very clear to the de facto rulers that we are ready to support them. But we need a clear political, inclusive political dialogue involving all Syrians, regardless of religion, ethnic origin, man or woman. Having a way to deal with Assad's crimes is equally important, because we know that deep wounds in societies can always be a source of new violence. There have always been acts of violence. That is why it's so important, in order to prevent further individual acts of revenge, that there is a step-by-step path to reconciliation for society.
What we start from is, of course, those sanctions that are hindering the build-up of a country. Access to banking services and all these things. But of course, it has to be a cascade with the conditions. So if you see the developments going to the right direction, we are ready to do the next steps. But also, it has to have a fallback position. If we see that it's not going to the right direction, then we can also move back on this.
And on the lighter note now, the performance directed by Mariusz Treliński once impressed Placido Domingos himself, who admitted that he had never seen such an excellent production of Madame Butterfly in his long life. Puccini's opera is now being performed in Warsaw with a stunning role by a world-class opera singer, Aleksandra Kurzak. Karolina Szapland has more.
This year marks the 25th anniversary of the legendary staging of Madame Butterfly, an opera by Giacomo Puccini, here in Warsaw's National Opera.
The show was dreamt up by a legendary duo, Mariusz Treliński, the director, and Borys Kudliczka, the stage designer. It's very different, it's muted, and it's full of Japanese spirituality.
I made a show which is unrealistic, which is metaphorical, which is more meditation than real life. And that for me was very important because I'm totally truthful to the Puccini music.
Madama Butterfly CEASEFIRE is sung by Aleksandra Kurzak, Poland's most famous international soprano. She admitted to us that this role is particularly challenging to her, both as an artist and as a mother.
I am in love with the music of Puccini. It's my favorite composer. So this is a huge achievement for myself. And as I call this role a Mount Everest each time when I sing it.
I have to say the music is so fresh and so on the same time classic and modern. It's universal, you know, it's forever. And the music is the right connection with the story.
Madama Butterfly will play here in Warsaw on the 31st of January and the 2nd of Feb. Simply, it's an opera that cannot be missed. I'm Karolina Shapland for TVP World.
And that's all we've prepared in this edition of World News, but please stay with us as we're coming back in just a minute.